Hey everybody, Kelli Jones here, wanting to walk you through the heuristic activity for Speak by Laurie Anderson. The name of my activity is May I See Your ID, Please? I want to first begin by letting you know about my audience and the teaching situation. This particular heuristic activity is suggested for general education 9th grade students, and typically that means inclusion students, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we've got some collaborative teachers who are also present to help with folks who need some extra help. Many times we just have a class set of texts. That's our reality. So this particular activity is designed where you do all of the class examination of the text during class time. Additionally, many students don't have access to technology at home, so any tech components of this activity are going to be so that students can use the tech available in the classroom or the media center. This is mostly discussion based, so not going to have a whole bunch of tech situations in that, but just kind of wanted to give that little disclaimer. Having said all of that, student work and reading or discussion, all those sorts of things in this activity, they're going to be designed to take place in the classroom. This is going to start with recognition of students' lower level skills according to Bloom's taxonomy, things like recall and understanding, and then we're going to progress with the idea of helping students move toward higher level skills, things like analysis and evaluation. The activities are going to focus on helping students be able to accurately identify, hence the title, concrete things like literary devices, and then we're going to help them move forward toward identifying the function of those devices and further identifying devices that would work equally as well or better in the same context. So an important note, a little bit of setup, a little bit of background before we begin my twist on Socratic seminar. Students are going to have brought in a small object that connects to the overall EQ. I will not have introduced anything about the text to them at this point. We always have an overarching mega EQ, I call it, that connects to the complete text. And in this situation, I would introduce it and just say, hey guys, bring something in to me on so-and-so day that illustrates the answer to the question, what is courage? So that's the EQ, the mega EQ that I've selected for Laurie Anderson's Speak. They will have brought this in and done several things in that situation. They will have told about the object. They will have described the object and explained why it relates to courage. And I'm also really interested to hear them give me their personal definitions of courage. Okay? So with that set up, we'll scroll up and I'll show you the goals that I have for my students. Heavy on the identify. That's why it's called Show Me Your ID, Please. Students are going to be able to identify pretty heavy hitter conceptual things like theme, author's purpose, structure of the text. Those are things that they're going to find useful in any other text they look at, and when those state tests come rolling around, those are things that are going to have to really be solid on. Also, hopefully, they're going to be able to identify specific lit devices in the text, things like, as you all know, metaphor, irony, personification, paradox, and so on. Want them to really understand, it's great to identify the lit device, but I really want them to understand the importance of being able to identify the function of that lit device. It's not enough just to say, ooh, woohoo, woohoo, irony, yay, I spotted that. What's it doing there? That's what I'm trying to help them move toward. After they have figured out what it's doing there, identifying that function of the lit device, then we're hoping to move them further up Bloom's taxonomy pyramid so that they can analyze the function of that lit device. After having done that, hopefully they can evaluate the effectiveness of that lit device, and then giving them in a written formative assessment, hopefully they'll be able to synthesize knowledge from other texts with this text. Okay, so let me scroll up a little bit more, and I will spell out my approach to Socratic seminar. That's the heuristic that I'm going to use with a twist. Been using Socratic seminar for, I guess, about 5 or 6 years now in my classroom. Students consistently say that out of everything we use to help them understand a text, and of course reading comprehension is the bedrock on which we build, they all say that Socratic seminar helps them understand a text because they get to formulate their own questions. It's like they get to play teacher. They're able to ask questions that they think are really relevant to reading comprehension. I loved in the Bushman and Haas chapter where they give kudos to Socratic seminar because it is a student-centered approach, and I'm quoting them there, you can see, in which students make their own meaning. That's pretty important because it helps them take ownership of the text, I have seen. My spin on Socratic Seminar takes into account, sorry, let me fix that, the importance of differentiation, which is key in a general ed class because of the makeup of learners in any given classroom. Lots of times you will have students who have IEPs, they may have specific reading disabilities, may have specific learning disabilities, struggling readers, people who are, it's not uncommon to have several grades behind grade level. There always seem to be some at grade level folks. They're just chugging along, but I don't want to let them stay comfortable. I want to kind of help them soar a little bit. And we always seem to have some above grade level students who could be in advanced classes, but you never know why they don't wind up there. Sometimes we truly have AP runaways. Got to make sure they don't fall asleep on us. Sometimes we've got students who really would prefer to be in an advanced class, but for whatever reason, scheduling and so on, they find themselves in a general ed class. I like to be a very pleasant surprise in terms of intellectual challenge for them. So, even though Socratic Seminar as a concept is going to be the same for every student, the differentiated way that I'm going to approach it, that's going to be based on student ability and student readiness, okay? Which is why we live on data. It's all data driven. That's how we tell what they're ready to do. So, this is kind of how this heuristic would work in my classroom. After reading each section of the text, the class is going to pause to consider questions that are directly connected to various parts of the text. Now, when I say each section, for the purposes of this, we're going to look at just the first marking period of Anderson's text, but because she's got it divided into kind of little like vignettes, sort of like Sandra Cisneros and Mongo Street, that's what I kept reading. Those are great little stopping points because they're a quick little focus on a specific situation. So we'll consider that our section of the text. So after each of those sections, the class is going to pause and think about these questions. Now, some of these questions I am going to create for them in whole or part, depending on who they are. Some of these questions are going to be created entirely by them, and they may or may not have some helps or guidelines, and I'll explain that in just a moment. Some of these questions are going to be entirely student-created with a specific focus. So asking to have these 3 different types of questions in those situations, that's really effective at the very beginning of a text, or just starting a novel, or you're just starting a play. That can really be helpful because as they sort of get in the groove, often I've seen that you can remove a little piece of the scaffold based on their progress. So like I said, we're going to consider just the first marking period of Speak. So for student group A, those are going to be my folks that are having difficulty with the reading. They may be lower the grade, less than grade level. They may have IEPs, they may have specific learning disabilities, at-risk students, etc. I don't ever assume that they know what Socratic Seminar is, especially with the 9th grade group. So I would model the first 2 Socratic Seminar questions for them, okay? So that's kind of connecting to prior learning, but it's also understanding that they may have 0 exposure to that, and that's okay. I don't mind giving them those first 2, and then after I've created those first 2 open-ended questions that can be supported textually, we know that's what Socratic means, then they are going to create 3 additional Socratic Seminar questions, and I'm going to give them a little bit of a guideline. Make sure they start with how or why. Lots of times, even my seniors, they may still have problems working with Socratic Seminar questions. I'll give them as a little reminder. I'm like, okay, guys, you know, it's got to be something that has more than one answer. It's got to be something that it can't be a yes or no answer. And I'll say, you know, a good place to start if you're struggling, start with the words how or why. Now, one caveat, one thing I make sure and let them know, I'm like, guys, remember, if your question is how does Bobo die, make sure that you understand that doesn't count even though it starts with how, because it only has one possible answer response. So I'll give them a little bit of guideline there, and then after they have come up with their own 3 that start with how or why, in addition to the 2 that I've created for them, then they're going to offer, as we have a class discussion, we're going to offer all of these questions up for discussion and debate among the whole class. One thing they will do as a group is evaluate the strength of the questions, and that's going to be based on how much textual evidence is available. Now for student group B, and those are my students reading at grade level, they are going to create all on their own a total of 5 Socratic Seminar questions. One has to be a question that starts with how, one is a question that starts with why, and the other 3 can't start with how or why, but they all 5 have to focus on specific literary devices and their functions. Okay, so a little bit more structure, a little bit more guideline, but they are still in control of the questions. In the same situation as with student group A. In addition to these questions being offered up for discussion to the whole group, the group will also evaluate the strength of those questions. Hey, how much textual evidence do we have? How was that question really strong? What was great about that question? Now for student group C, we're raising the rigor just a little bit more. Those are my folks who are reading at or above grade level. They are going to create a total of 5 Socratic seminar questions, and it's going to be based on the function of lit devices in the text. Now 2 of these questions, sorry about that guys, 2 of these questions have got to address a potential substitution of this literary device. For example, what I mean by that, they're observing, hey, here's personification and here's what it's doing. For example, if someone gives human qualities to a sweater, like in Beast of the Southern Wild, if you're familiar with that film, they did that because the mother was absent, okay? Now, if the person recognizes, irony might have been more effective here, and here's why I think that, I'm going to ask this group to accept the challenge to create a question about that. Something like that may sound like in Laurie Anderson's Speak, when personification was used in blah, 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 why would irony have been more effective? Okay, so same situation as group A and B. They're going to offer these questions up for discussion among the entire class, and they're going to evaluate the strength of the questions. Okay, so for every student, at the end of discussion, here is one more thing we're going to have to do at the end of the day. I want them to give me, and this is just like a ticket out the door. This would be like something they would give me on an index card or a Post-it note. One new thought they had based on today's discussion. One question they still have based on today's discussion. One point of the text that they changed their mind about based on that day's discussion. And I really love reading number 3 because I think it's so important when a student approaches a text to keep an open mind and listen to the perspectives, the perceptions of those around them, because you may start to think differently about something. So to recap, the basic format for my spin on Socratic Seminar, we will do collaborative reading, then students will create Socratic Seminar questions, and then we will have a Socratic Seminar discussion based on those student-created questions. Lather, rinse, repeat. Some formative analysis, kind of a way to let me know and let them know how things are going. I do several things. I do give a grade on Socratic discussion. So one of the requirements that they have up front, and they know this already, they do have to answer at least one time, and they do have to comment on the response of another student, okay? And I've got a classroom grid, a roster, and I'm just kind of checking and just keeping track of that. It's really not as hard to do as it sounds. I do grade on written assignments, which I'll explain in just a couple of minutes. On the 3 things post-discussion, I don't give a grade on that because that's mostly opinion. That's an effort participation situation, so I don't give a written grade on that. Here is a writing assignment that would be based on the discussion. This would be something that would come at the end of, I would probably group it in maybe after the first couple or 3 vignettes at a time. It's student choice, so that's another way to put some differentiation in there, but they have to alternate. If we've done 3 in a row and they've picked number 2 3 times in a row, the next time I'll say, okay, pick number 1. So here are their student choices. Write a beefy paragraph in which you make a current connection between a real person and the protagonist and tell why that makes the text stronger. Choice number 2, write a beefy paragraph in which you identify a lit device and its function, and you're connecting that to another work and a text you've examined in any lit class. I'll open that up to a previous year. Okay, so you're saying, ooh, I see that metaphor functioned as such and such here. Oh, that's just like this other text that we read. And explain why that works well. Okay, thanks so much for listening. Hope I gave you something you can use. Until next time, so long.